Gangsters on Both Sides of the Law. Book 1, The Controversy on Florence. Chapter 1, The Murder Scene. A sucker in a uniform waiting to get shot. Eazy-E. Day 1. The cold, crisp air cut through the still night. The wind was soft but cold on this late California night. The officer stood tall and proud as he scanned the 3 suspects for contraband. He wasn't satisfied when he found that there was nothing worth an arrest. He eyed each individual with a sullen and stern look that made each passenger in the car cringe. After searching their bodies, he decided to search the car. He was determined to put some kind of charge on them, even if he had to plant it there himself. The car was just as clean as the people he had just searched. He had really gotten a kick out of searching the woman, but he only got to feel on her ass and tits. He hadn't checked to see if she had anything in her panties. There was no use calling for a woman cop to do something he definitely enjoyed doing. He smiled at the woman as he frisked her. "I need you to sit on the curb so that I can search the car," the officer barked. "We don't have to sit on the curb. It's not mandatory that we sit on the curb. You can search the car, but you won't humiliate us by making us sit on the ground," Ryan calmly replied. "What did you say, nigger? If I want you on the ground, then that's where you'll be," the officer barked. "I don't think so," Rojan added. "I have a couple of uppity niggers that think that they are above the law," the officer grinned. He walked over closer to them with a stern yet sinister disposition. He put his hand on his pistol and stared at the young black men. After several seconds, he realized that they weren't budging from their position. He unlatched the strap that was securing his 9mm. "I see we have a corrupt cop on our hands. You know it's against the law to force us to sit on the ground, especially if you don't have probable cause," Ryan sighed. "I am the law, nigger. How am I going to go against myself? If I say something is a certain way, then that's how it is. And if you don't do as you're told, it's considering resisting arrest. Now sit on the fucking curb." The moments moved slowly, but the action went fast. In a flash, the police officer attempted to pull his pistol out to point it at the young men. He didn't have time to think before a single shot went off. It plugged the officer in his forehead as his body was knocked back several feet. All 3 looked at the officer laid out on the ground and glanced at each other. Nervously, they turned around and jumped into the vehicle. The oldest brother, Ryan, put the car in drive and sped off into the night. They began to undress in the car as though there was evidence on their clothes. He turned on one corner to hit a back street, then turned down 2 more streets to reach another side street. His longtime girlfriend, Nadira, sat on the passenger seat calmly while the 2 brothers scanned the streets to see if they were followed. They could hear the sirens speeding by as they slowly made their way back to Florence Avenue. Ryan patiently waited for the last of the police cars to drive by before he reached Florence again. As he drove eastward down Florence, he made one more scan of the area before he pulled the car into the garage. "You taking this motherfucker to Earl Shive tomorrow anyway, right?" Rojan asked. "That's the plan. But it was more of getting bored with the color, not because the nigga has to," Ryan replied. "Well, it seems like perfect timing to me," Nadira shrugged. Both brothers looked at Nadira while Ryan cruised into the garage. Ryan wasn't too worried because he had an El Camino and a Monte Carlo. He was real good at fixing up cars, but he could never paint them himself. He had dealer's tags on his old school ride because he had an extension from the DMV. He sighed, then leaned his head back in the seat as he pondered on what just happened. A cop was left dead in the middle of the street on a major boulevard. His girlfriend and brother had already climbed out of the car. "You coming, Ryan?" Nadira softly asked. "In a minute, baby." After sitting in the car for 10 minutes, He finally made his way into the house. Nadera had already began warming up the food. Everything was in place for a late night snack. He walked over and kissed Nadera on her cheek. Rojan walked down the stairs with a pillowcase filled to the rim. Is that everything that can link us to that shit? Ryan asked. Yeah, that's everything. If we able to get away with murdering a police officer, Rojan replied. Huey P. Newton got away with killing a cop. We didn't murder anyone. We were using self-defense, Ryan shrugged. But you act like you never heard of Mumia Abu Jamal. They will have all our black asses on death row in a heartbeat, Rojan retorted. Well, all we can do is be careful and try to cover up whatever we can. Hopefully we can pull off this shit in one piece. Ryan shook his head. The food is ready, Nadera interjected. Are you hungry, little bro? Hell no, it's almost 2 in the morning. That's how a motherfucker gets fat. I'll sit this in the backyard until we find a place to permanently put it. Rojan lifted up the pillowcase. Double check the car, Ryan yelled after him. Ryan sat down to eat the plate of food that was placed in front of him. Nadera fixed her a small plate and sat next to her man. They were in love. She was the best friend he had besides his brother. After she quickly finished her plate, she began picking at his. He looked at her and smiled. She playfully pouted while taking small morsels of his chicken. You don't want me eating off your plate? She asked. Baby, you know I don't mind you eating off my plate. I just thought you would fix a bigger plate if you wanted more. Ryan smirked. But I just want to pick off your plate. Is that okay, Ryan? It's okay. Detective Daryl Lacey cruised up in his Crown Victoria with his new partner, Detective Sims. They were both homicide detectives, but Lacey had much more experience. Sims was new to homicide, and Lacey had at least 10 years over him. They knew the routine as a uniformed officer led them drive through the yellow tape area. Another uniformed cop stood next to the body, fuming. His angry disposition was obvious as Lacey and Sims approached. Lacey tried to ignore the officer's attitude so that he could carry out business. When he reached the dead body, he began to realize why the uniformed officer was so upset. Is that Wallace laid out on the ground like that? Sims asked in disbelief. People in L.A. think it's okay to kill a cop, huh? The uniformed officer muttered. Lacey stared at the body and noticed the bullet hole piercing the forehead. He looked at the body to notice that the strap was unlatched from Wallace's pistol holder. He looked around the perimeter of the corpse but couldn't find any tire marks. It appears as though someone beat him in a drawdown. His latch on his service weapon is off. Hand me some gloves. After sliding on plastic gloves, he acknowledged that there was only one shot that killed Officer Wallace. As he turned the body over, he smelled an intoxicating perfume. He wondered about that for a moment and stood up after squatting. But Wallace either just got him some pussy or was about to get some pussy, Lacey commented. Do you believe that a woman has something to do with it? Sims asked. There is no telling. We will rule this a homicide, code 187. It appears that it was a small pistol with a kick like a 380. Based on the scene, he was knocked back several feet. Lacey took off his gloves. Moments later, a coroner pulled up and waited for Lacey and Sims to finish scanning the perimeter. They questioned one witness, but he was a vagrant that didn't have all his marbles. Amazing enough, there weren't any witnesses on a Los Angeles boulevard, even if it was 2 or 3 in the morning.